I want you to picture a specific moment. You've just had a massive win. Maybe you closed a huge deal, your company just got funding, or I don't know, you just posted about a major promotion.
You're on top of the world.
You're feeling good. And then your phone buzzes. And then it buzzes again and again. You look at the screen and it's not your partner. It's not your best friend.
Oh, no.
It's a guy you sat next to in biology class 15 years ago. It's an ex-colleague who, actually tried to get you fired. Suddenly they all want to grab coffee.
Or pick your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the universal tax on success. As soon as the light turns on, the room gets crowded.
Exactly. And the feeling you get isn't just, oh, I'm popular. It's this very specific cocktail of suspicion and annoyance.
Right.
And we have a phrase for this. We say, they are coming out of the woodwork. We toss that idiom around constantly, but I don't think we really appreciate just how aggressive it actually is.
It is aggressive. It's practically an accusation. And that's why we're doing this deep dive today. We aren't just doing a grammar lesson here. We're looking at a guide that treats this idiom as a piece of social strategy.
Okay.
It's about how we use language to sort of gatekeep our circles and call out bad behavior without technically starting a fight.
So we're decoding the insult.
We're decoding the defense mechanism. Because when you say someone is coming out of the woodwork, you are doing something very complex socially.
You're questioning their legitimacy.
Exactly.
Let's get into the mechanics of it. The guide we're looking at breaks this down into something it calls the Strategic Triad. It claims that for this specific phrase to actually make sense,
To be the right thing to say.
yes, to be the right thing to say, 3 specific conditions have to be met.
Right. You can't just use it anytime someone shows up. It has to pass 3 tests.
Yeah.
The first element is that the arrival must be unpredicted.
Okay.
You had 0 expectation that this person was going to contact you.
So if I have a scheduled meeting with my accountant, he's not coming out of the woodwork.
Exactly. Yeah. Even if you don't like him, he's on the calendar. So the second element is that the arrival must be unwelcome.
And this is crucial.
It's critical.
Yeah.
If your long-lost brother who you adore shows up with a winning lottery ticket, he's not coming out of the woodwork. He's a miracle.
He's a miracle, right?
Woodwork implies that the arrival is a negative event.
It's an intrusion.
Precisely. And the third element is the clincher. It must be opportunistic. The person appearing is looking to gain something. They aren't there for the scenery. They are there for the harvest.
So unpredicted, unwelcome, opportunistic. If you don't have all 3, you're just describing a surprise visit.
Yeah.
But if you have all 3, you're describing a parasite.
That is exactly the imagery the idiom relies on. The guide uses this great visual metaphor of a house foundation, a sturdy wooden structure. Now, imagine that structure is secretly infested with, say, termites or other pests. When we use this phrase, we are tapping into that energy.
We're not talking about guests.
We aren't talking about guests knocking on the front door. We are talking about things crawling out of the walls.
That is visibly visceral. I think because we hear the phrase so often, oh, they're coming out of the woodwork, we forget that woodwork is a literal, physical thing.
We do. And the guide argues that to really deploy this phrase with authority, you have to reconnect with the grain. You need to visualize the literal joinery.
The grain of the wood.
Yes. Think about the baseboards in your house, or decorative molding, or the trim around a doorframe. In the context of this idiom, the woodwork represents a hidden state.
A hidden state.
It's a location that is technically in the room with you, but it's out of sight.
It's the crevices.
Exactly. It's the dark, narrow cracks behind the luxury trim. That is where the pests reside. They live unnoticed in these crevices until they decide it's time to move. So when you apply this to a person, when you say, Steve came out of the woodwork,
You're putting Steve in the wall.
you are psychologically placing Steve in a crack in the wall.
That implies they were there the whole time, doesn't it? That's the creepy part. They weren't in another city. They were just hovering in the dark.
That's the hidden state. You're implying they were effectively invisible, just waiting. But the idiom isn't just about location. It's about action. It's about the shock of emergence.
The coming out part.
Right. The verb phrase here is based on the concept of running out or, active emergence. Pests don't usually saunter.
They scurry.
They scurry. The guide highlights that the idiom relies on the specific behavior of pests inhabiting wood. It's sudden.
And that suddenness triggers a reaction.
It triggers 2 very specific emotional reactions, surprise and distaste. Think about the physical reaction you have if you move an old bookshelf and a bug runs out.
You jump back, you recoil. It's a primal get away from me feeling.
Exactly. And the analysis here is that we map that exact biological recoil onto social situations. When that opportunist sends you that DM asking for a favor, the feeling you get in your gut is the same feeling you get seeing the roach.
It's an invasion.
It's an invasion.
That brings us to this diagram in the guide called the bridge. It's connecting the infestation to the social critique.
It's bridging the literal to the figurative. On the literal side, you have insects crawling out from unnoticed crevices. That's the physical reality of the woodwork.
Right.
On the figurative side, you have people or issues revealing themselves only when an opportunity arises.
And the bridge between them is that shared feeling of surprise and distaste.
Yes, the visual metaphor creates a symbolic connection. By using this phrase, you are effectively turning invisible people into hidden pests.
Wow.
You aren't just saying they arrived, you are characterizing their nature. You are stripping them of their humanity and reducing them to an appetite.
It's dehumanizing, but in a defensive way. You're protecting yourself.
It's social gating. You're establishing a barrier. This leads us to the section on decoding the signal.
Okay.
When you use this phrase, you are sending a coded message to everyone else in your circle.
Okay, so if I'm at a dinner party and I say, yeah, ever since the IPO, people are really coming out of the woodwork, what am I actually telling the table?
Well, the input is the idiom. The decoded signal is this. These people are opportunistic and their presence is illegitimate.
Illegitimate, that's a heavy word.
It's the most important word in this section. The analysis here emphasizes that using woodwork is a calculated judgment on legitimacy.
So you're not just describing.
You are dismissing the arrival as self-serving rather than sincere. You're telling your tribe, these new people, they don't belong here. They didn't earn it.
It separates the pest from the guest.
Correct. A guest is invited or welcome. A pest forces their way in because they smell food.
Let's apply this. The guide has a really detailed scenario here about a startup founder. I think this is the perfect petri dish for this kind of behavior.
It really is. The response to success timeline is the classic breeding ground for the woodwork effect. So let's walk through the phases.
Okay.
Phase 1 is the hidden years.
This is the grind. You're eating ramen, you're working out of a garage, you're stressed out of your mind.
And, crucially, you are doing it in silence. The phone isn't ringing. The inbox is empty. Those friends from high school.
Not calling.
They aren't checking in to see how the beta testing is going. You are invisible.
You're totally invisible.
Then comes the event. In this scenario, the founder announces a massive Series A funding round. Suddenly, there's money on the table.
Right.
This acts as a beacon.
It's the lighthouse turning on.
And that triggers phase 2, the influx. There's a sudden vertical spike in communication.
And who shows up?
The guide lists the usual suspects. Distant acquaintances you haven't spoken to in a decade. Aggressive vendors who want to sell you services you don't need.
The let's partner up crowd.
Exactly. And the founder's reaction, the verdict, is to dismiss this sudden interest as coming out of the woodwork. Why?
Because it's obvious.
Because it is transparently transactional. The timeline proves the intent. If they cared, they would have called during the ramen phase. They're only calling now because of the Series A.
It's funny because if one of those people had called a week before the announcement just to say hi, the founder probably would have been delighted.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow, Mike from college. Great to hear from you.
That's the tragedy of it. The timing kills the relationship because the timing reveals the opportunism.
So if we want to be fair and accurate with our language, we need to know when we are actually allowed to use this phrase. Because I feel like I might use it too loosely.
I think we all do.
Oh, my cousins are coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah, don't do that unless you really hate your cousins.
Yeah.
The guide provides a protocol for high-stakes usage. It's basically a checklist.
Okay.
It's called the manifest, critical criteria verification.
I love that we have a manifesto for an idiom. What are the boxes we need to check?
There are 3. If you can't check all 3, put the idiom back in the drawer. Criterion 1, lack of prior warning. The appearance must be entirely unpredicted and abrupt.
Okay, totally out of nowhere.
If there was a hint they were coming, it's not woodwork.
Got it. Criterion 2.
Previously hidden status. The subject must have been inactive, absent, or effectively invisible prior to the event. They have to come from somewhere hidden.
Okay, that makes sense. And the third one?
This is highlighted as crucial. Criterion 3, undesirable motivation. The emergence is framed as opportunistic, parasitic, or otherwise unwelcome.
So if a nice old lady appears out of nowhere to return a wallet you dropped, she is not coming out of the woodwork.
No, she appeared out of nowhere, maybe out of the blue, but she's not Woodwork. Woodwork requires malice, or at least selfishness.
That actually brings up a really good point. We have other phrases for sudden appearance.
We do.
Out of the blue, out of nowhere. Are those just softer versions of the same thing?
No, and this is where the guy gets really interesting. Compares the woodwork to similar idioms to understand the nuance. The difference isn't just intensity, it's category.
Walk me through out of the blue.
Okay, so out of the blue. The definition here is neutral or pleasant. The nuance focuses on the unexpected nature, but without ill intent.
Right.
The example, a former mentor offering a job.
He called me out of the blue with a job offer. That's a good thing.
Right. It's like a lightning bolt from a clear sky.
Yeah.
It's a surprise, but it's clean. Now look at it. Out of nowhere.
The cyclist came out of nowhere.
Exactly. The definition is situational or physical.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the abruptness of physical appearance. It's about spatial awareness.
Okay.
It doesn't imply the cyclist was plotting against you. They just appeared.
But the woodwork distinction, that one is different.
It is negative and opportunistic. It implies intentional hiding until there is something to gain.
Ooh.
The example given is consultants claiming royalties after a patent is approved.
Yeah. They didn't just appear, they were waiting for the patent number to be issued.
That's the key. And the guy calls this calculated concealment. This is the psychological difference.
Calculated concealment. That sounds premeditated.
It is. Let's look at the visual metaphors again. For out of the blue, or out of nowhere, visualize a lightning bolt.
Right.
It's the surprise of the moment.
It just happens. It's chaotic.
But for woodwork, the visual is eyes peering from behind wooden slats.
That is infinitely more disturbing.
It represents waiting for opportunity. The insight here is that woodwork implies they were always there waiting to strike.
Right.
Out of the blue suggests they truly weren't around before. But the woodwork people, they were watching you struggle. They saw you working in the garage. They just chose to stay behind the slacks until the banquet was served.
That adds a layer of betrayal to it. It's not just that they want money, it's that they watched you bleed to get it and did nothing.
Exactly. And that is why the phrase is so powerful. Which brings us to the final section, controlling the subtext. Why do we use this phrase instead of just calling them jerks?
It feels cleaner, doesn't it? More strategic.
It's a rhetorical shift. By invoking the imagery of the woodwork, the speaker shifts the focus of the conversation.
Okay.
You stop talking about the simple act of someone appearing.
We aren't debating whether they called.
We are discussing the suspect nature of their intent. The focus moves entirely to their morality.
So it's a way of seizing the moral high ground without a fight.
It achieves total communicative clarity. It allows you to call out bad behavior without explicitly yelling. The idiom does the work for you.
Right.
You don't have to say, I think this person is a greedy scavenger. You just say, they're coming out of the woodwork, and everyone at the table knows exactly what you mean.
They get it.
They know to keep their guard up.
It's efficient. It's a warning shot.
That's the velvet dagger. Soft words, sharp point.
The velvet dagger. Stealing that. So we've gone from the literal moldings on the floor through the startup boardroom all the way to this concept of calculated concealment.
It really highlights that language is a tool for social sorting. We use these images to categorize the people around us, who is safe, who is a guest, and who is a pest.
And it all comes down to intent. That's the big takeaway for me. It's not about who shows up. It's about why they waited until now.
Absolutely. The timing reveals the character.
So here is a final thought for you listening. We all like to think of ourselves as the protagonist in the startup story, the one fighting off the pests.
Sure.
But take a hard look in the mirror. The next time you reach out to someone who just had a big win, someone you haven't spoken to in years, ask yourself honestly, are you coming out of the blue or are you coming out of the woodwork?
Check your own intent.
Yeah.
Because they can tell the difference.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.